All right, welcome back to News 4 Tucson Sports Sunday. I'm David Kelly. Jedd Fisch hit it out of the park with his first recruiting class. Let's talk about it. Joined by Matt Moreno, the senior editor from GoAZCats.com. They are under the Rivals umbrella. And Matt, just this is as good a class as we've seen here in recent years. What was the messaging that they sent to these kids, that they laid out to these recruits, that allowed them and encouraged them to want to say yes to coming to Tucson and trying to help turn around this program?
Well, I think there were different levels to, attracting these recruits that they brought in. And it is definitely the best the best recruiting class since I've been here covering the team in the last 10 years or so. But to me, the one thing that kind of resonated with everybody talking to the different recruits, even going back to the start of the process, was just the vision. They want to feel like they're part of, the change at Arizona. And I think that really resonated going all the way up until, T. Mac McMillan decided and said, hey, I want to be part of this class. I want to be the first 5-star that, has signed with this program in a long time. I think it's just the vision, being part of whatever Jedd Fisch is trying to build here. And I think wanting to be part of that change really mattered to a lot of these players. And then I think the second thing was the NFL connections. There's so many NFL connections on this staff. And I think a lot of the recruits, whenever you talk to any recruit at any level, their hope is to get to the NFL. I think that mattered a lot for these recruits that signed in this class and, influenced a lot of these decisions that they made.
All right, Matt, we've been around this thing for, like you said, about 10 years at the same time covering. You've probably heard me. I'm not into short quarterbacks. That's what Noah Fafeta is. They list him at 5'10". I heard somebody tell me that he was maybe 5'8", although I did have a parent of another kid in a sport at Servite who told me that this kid is the real deal. So sell me on Noah Fafeta and why I should believe that he's the kid that potentially could turn this program around.
Yeah, I think if you look at him just as a prospect and if you take the height out of it, he's everything you're looking for. He has an accurate arm. He has a decently strong arm for, considering his size. And he just has the makeup that you like, the personality that you like at that position. I think that's something that is somewhat difficult to find at times, but he carries himself like a quarterback. He carries himself like a leader. He was a really big part of this recruiting class coming together. Arizona doesn't land a lot of the recruits they land in this class unless Noah Fafeta is part of the group. And so there's a leadership quality about him that really stands out, but you can't overlook the size. That is going to be something that is going to have to be worked around at the college level. I'm not sold that it's going to work. I do believe in his skill set and what he brings to the table, but I think the offense is going to have to be built and there's going to have to be some things within Jedd Fisch's scheme that really cater to what he does. Because of that size, I think there is going to be some limitations to what they do. They'll have to work around that, but I don't think it's something in the end that's going to hold him back from being truly successful at the next level. But I think it might take some adjustment and some fine tuning by Jedd Fisch and this offensive staff to really cater to his skill set, because I do think the height is something you can't overlook in the end.
All right, Matt, we've talked a little bit about Noah Fafeta. You mentioned Tetaroa, McMillan, T-Mac. Both of those kids are from Servite. There are two other players that signed from Anaheim Servite High School. Why this school? What was it about this particular high school? Was it just driven by the fact that they were talking to Noah Fafeta and they saw all these other kids, or did they specifically target this high school for a reason?
Yeah, I think, the one thing you look at with this group is that they've been together a while. They've played youth football together, and so they had a lot of success at that level. So they've been on a lot of radars for a lot of college programs over the last few years. They've really turned things around at Servite. And I think when you look at Jedd Fisch, and even when he talked about when he was going through the defensive coordinator hire, and he said, I want somebody that's been part of a rebuild. When you look at the Servite players, they've been part of a rebuild themselves. When they got to Servite, they had a losing record. They just finished their senior season as a top 10 team in the country. And so I think that was something that was kind of noticeable going into this last year, where Jedd Fisch and some of his staff members that had ties to Southern California said, hey, look at this group of players. They have a chance to be really good and do some things and have been part of a rebuilding process. And so I think that was part of it. They're very talented just on their own right. But also I think what you saw play out was part of the plan for Jedd Fisch, in that it's not just getting Noah Fafeta. If you get Noah Fafeta, there is a chance you could get, everybody on this team that is a Power 5 level player. Obviously, Arizona wasn't able to do that, but you have Mason Graham, who's going to Michigan, but outside of that, they got every Power 5 senior on this roster. And so that's a coup for Jedd Fisch and his staff. And I think that was always part of the plan is, hey, let's see if we can get this entire group to stay together, because they are so talented, but it also helps you, kill 4 birds with one stone, because you can go to one school, build some ties there, build another pipeline into a strong high school in the Southern California area. But I think the way it played out is exactly what Jedd Fisch had in his mind, is that if you get one, there's a potential you can get more, and they're all very talented.
I thought it was interesting something that Matt Doherty said in the press conference the other day, that it all focuses around the quarterback, and then you kind of build off of that. So who then is the quarterback in the next class that they're targeting potentially, and are there kids around him that could make up that next class?
Yeah, I mean, Pierce Clarkson is somebody that's been very interesting over the last few days as Arizona started to really put the finishing touches on this class. He's kind of voiced his opinion and kind of, put some emojis on Twitter and kind of quote tweeted a lot of the players and said, oh, maybe they have something going on down there in Tucson. Pierce Clarkson is the son of Steve Clarkson, a quarterback guru out in Southern California. He plays quarterback at St. John Bosco, another powerful powerhouse program in Southern California, churns out Power 5 level talent, churns out NFL players. And so he's the quarterback of that program, currently a junior. Arizona has offered him. At this point, because of Johnny Nansen and his ties and the rest of the coaching staff and their ties to Southern California, schools like that are going to be a priority for this program. If you look at how Arizona closed the class, they pull a player from Mater Dei. They pull, these guys from Servite. They pull a couple players from Alamany High School, which is another powerhouse in Southern California. So Pierce Clarkson is someone that I would keep an eye on. He's a very talented player. There's been a lot of buzz about him potentially ending up at Louisville. He's got some Power 5 offers already, but I could see him being someone that Arizona targets and keeps an eye on, just because, again, he's paying a lot of attention to what's going on in Tucson the last couple of weeks and what's going to be happening at Arizona. And I think he's going to be someone to keep a close eye on moving forward.
All right, is T-Mac an offensive player, or is he potentially a defensive player? Because obviously he's done that in high school. He looks pretty good as a cornerback, but you think this is definitely a kid that'll be an offensive player here at the University of Arizona?
It would be really interesting. It would be funny if they eventually do move him to defense, or if he says, I want to play defense, because when you look at his senior film, most of his highlight plays came on defense. I mean, he had a one-handed interception. He had some really major game-changing plays on defense, and he really shined as a cornerback. I was able to see him a couple times during the season, and he was a lockdown defender and someone who, did a lot of good things defensively. But I think a lot of that had to do with that he was getting double-teamed and sometimes triple-teamed and kind of getting taken out of the offensive game plan a little bit. But I think his future going forward is on the offensive side, I believe. And he's just so talented. Not quite the burner that I think everyone expects at wide receiver. He doesn't have the speed that every other receiver is going to have. But again, he checks off so many of those boxes, and that he has really amazing hands. He's a great route runner, has that leaping ability, has a background as a volleyball player. And so he has great leaping ability and is going to be a red zone threat. And so I think for him, I think the value at Arizona is going to be offensively, but it wouldn't shock me if he eventually says, hey, can I go try and play a little bit of cornerback, because he did have a lot of success there during his senior season.
I wanted to talk a little bit about Kenyon Burnett. Obviously, he's a legacy kid. Jedd Fisch came in here last year, said that he was going to utilize the tight end. We did not see that this past season. Really, they didn't really throw any more to the tight end this past season than they had under Kevin Sumlin or Rich Rodriguez. Do you believe that was because they didn't feel like they had a tight end on the roster that they could dominate the middle of the field with?
I think there's a different level of things that you could look at. I do think that just not having the type of caliber of player at that position, I do think mattered. That's going to have to change moving forward. I mean, Kenyon Burnett is headed to Arizona because he wants to catch passes and he wants to be a big part of this offense. And one reason he ended up not going to USC is because he didn't like, under the former staff, the way that he was going to be used in their system. And so he believes he's a true tight end. He believes he's going to be someone who's going to be more in line and, not someone that they're going to split out wide, but he's so talented as a pass catcher. I imagine he'll be spending some time, on the outside and catching passes like you would see a receiver. But he believes he's a tight end, and that's where his future is at. And he was talking to me this week, and he said, one thing I want to do is I want to be a Mackey finalist in my first season. And so he has high hopes for himself as a tight end, not as a receiver, but he wants to be a tight end. And it'll be on Arizona staff to figure out how to get him into the mix and how to best utilize him, because I do believe he has a ton of skill at that position. I do think his blocking will naturally have to improve, but as a pass catcher at the tight end position, he can make a difference. And so it'll be up to Arizona staff to really find ways to get him the ball.
Yeah, well, if they don't throw the ball to him, I don't think they're ever going to throw the ball to the tight end. Let's jump over to the defense side real quick and just talk about one kid, one of the 4 stars down there, Sterling Lane. What do you like about what he potentially is going to bring to this program?
Yeah, I mean, one of those guys that there's a little bit of a question mark of would he sign or would he not sign. Cincinnati made a late run at him, obviously having a very good season out there this year. And so they made a late push and really tried to sway him away from Arizona. But He had a really strong relationship with Ricky Hunley that really, only got stronger as the year went on. And obviously, when Arizona goes through a coaching change defensively, it's going to, cause him to take a step back and figure some things out. But ended up signing a very, very good pickup for Arizona. Really, the type of player that Arizona wants and needs to have, along the defensive line, a pass rusher. There was some thought maybe eventually he can move to outside linebacker, but I think his strength is going to be at defensive end, and really feels like an heir apparent to Jalen Harris and somebody who could even springboard off of the success that Jalen's had so far and be a real difference maker off the edge for Arizona. I really like his skill set. Again, he's going to be somebody that when you roll up to Arizona Stadium next season, you go, okay, that's the type of player they need to have, and they should have been having for a long time here. And so, he fits the bill in terms of the look. He's had, a very good season and a very good career as a pass rusher in California. And now he makes that jump to the next level. But somebody that I think is going to get after the quarterback and really bring, a boost to their pass rushing skill set to Arizona and to their production, coming off the edge.
Who is your sleeper in this class? Maybe that one kid that maybe everybody's kind of looking at and saying, yeah, maybe, but you really like him and think, yeah, that kid's going to be a player here.
So someone that I think got lost in the shuffle because there was so much attention paid to T-Mac and what he's going to bring to the table as a wide receiver. A.J. Jones is kind of a little bit more unheralded as a wide receiver, but just as tall, maybe just as effective as a wide receiver. I mean, he's a tall guy, has a lot of length, has that leaping ability as well, has some great hands. He didn't play a lot of receiver during his senior season, actually worked as their quarterback this year just because of necessity and his team not having a quarterback. So didn't have that experience at receiver as a senior, but when I watched him throughout the year and saw him in a couple different camps early in the year, really impressed me. And he was in the same camp at one point in the summer as T-Mac. And if you would have told me one guy was a 5-star and the other guy was a 5-star, I would have believed it as well, because A.J. Jones is, holding his own in that camp and really looked the part of what Arizona needs. So now you're talking about, bookend 6'4" wide receivers. And I really do think because of the attention that T-Mac is going to receive, everyone knows his name now. He's not going to be able to hide. You're going to take attention away from some of the other receivers. And so I think A.J. Jones, another kind of under the radar player for Arizona that I think people forgot how good he was just because there was so much attention paid to other people. Obviously a heavily saturated talent area in Southern California, kind of got lost in the shuffle this year, but he's someone that I think is going to have a really, really strong career at Arizona. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do.
All right, you said 5-star, so I'm going to ask you this last question, then break this down for me, because obviously the two major services out there, you guys are rivals. 24/7 Sports also does rankings. You guys have T-Mac rated as a 5-star, 11th best in the country. 24/7 had him rated 4-star, 46th best in the country. Why did you guys see more in him than they did?
I really think it's something that we talked about at the beginning of this, was his ability as a two-way player. I think that just showed you're trying to project what he can be at the next level and what his future is, what his potential is, along with his production. And I think he really showed a lot by being able to play defensively and not just be someone who's out there, but really truly making plays. And so I think he added value to what he is as a recruit when you saw what he could do defensively, when that became a viable option. And there probably are some coaches that would have said, hey, we would have played him on defense, and we would play him on defense in college. And I think that added a lot of value to what rivals thought of him and the decision makers at our company thought about him. And I think that meant a lot to his ranking. And when you just watched him, you just said there's something different about him. And he proved it against very, very top competition. I know this creates waves sometimes with people in Texas and Florida, but the Trinity League in Southern California is thought of as the best league in the country. They had, 3 top 10 teams at one point. And so he's going up against top competition, a lot of Power 5 competition every week. And he never dropped off in his production or his talent level, and always rose to the occasion. And I think that paid off a lot as well, because he consistently saw top level competition, and not every player can say that. And so I think for rivals that meant a lot, but I think the real value came in that he's a true talent on both sides of the ball. And I think that really mattered in the end.
All right, well, Matt, it's going to be fun to watch. It's still very early in this process and in this program with Jedd Fisch, but it starts with getting dudes. And I think they got some dudes in this class that can help this program on the field. Matt, appreciate you taking a few moments to join us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, stay with us here at News 4 Tucson Sports, KVOA.com, for our continuing coverage of Arizona Wildcats football.